Before we get into it, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone try to claim your property out of thin air? Drop your experience in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. If stories about property rights, HOA overreach, and standing your ground matter to you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss what's coming next, because this one turned an entire lakeside community upside down. You better have enough parking for everyone. That was the first line of the email from the HOA president, written as if she were my event boss and I was on her payroll. I almost spit coffee across the kitchen. I don't rent this place. I live here. And according to the attached catering invoice, addressed to me, 80 people were about to roll into our quiet corner of the lake as if it were a public park. My hands actually shook as I pictured our little dock packed with strangers, coolers, strollers, music, and boat ropes everywhere. The image didn't feel like a nightmare. It felt like something worse, being erased in your own home. That morning had started like every good one does out here. I stood at the kitchen window watching steam rise off my mug, the lake lying so still you could count the clouds in it. Our old wooden deck stretched out toward the water, weathered gray in a way only years of sun and rain can earn. Yesterday I had watched a pair of loons shift on their nest near the cattails, a small, fragile miracle we'd been documenting for weeks under a federal research permit that hung framed behind me. That permit wasn't just paper. It was a promise. Quiet hours. A mandated 300-foot noise buffer around the nest. 8 weeks of baseline recordings already logged. Bring 100 people with car doors slamming and radio speakers thumping into the sanctuary, and everything we'd built would crumble. My phone buzzed. I tapped the notification. Subject line: Event confirmation, Waterfront Community Day. My address. My dock. A hand-drawn map with arrows that ran from the road to our private beach. Vendor confirmations. Catering schedules. Venue coordinator, Pamela Knox. I read the email 3 times before my brain caught up. I even laughed, because what else are you supposed to do when the absurd walks into your kitchen like it owns the place? Then I opened the attachment. A catering invoice billed directly to venue owner, Mason Hale. My name. My supposed responsibility. My jaw clenched so hard my molars ached. Coffee sloshed across the counter as I set the mug down too hard. This wasn't a mistake. It was a takeover. Not by force, but by assumption. The kind of assumption that turns into trespass and then into, well, the community has always done it this way. I pulled our records with fingers that couldn't quite steady. County tax site, title documents, the boundary survey I knew by heart. There it all was, clean as sunlight. My name as sole owner. The property line exactly where it always had been. Well outside the HOA's jurisdiction. We bought this place precisely because it wasn't part of the association. No paying committees. No lawn length debates. No monthly meetings about mailbox designs. Just a lake, a lab of sorts, and the freedom to do our work the way it's meant to be done, without someone's rules grinding at the edges. The permit on the wall pulled my eyes back. Federal authorization. Acoustic study of loon nesting behavior. Quiet hours, no exceptions. 8 weeks of baseline data. A 300-foot buffer zone. Law. Not suggestion. If crowds showed up, music, chatter, laughter echoing across the water, boat wakes slapping the shore, months of irreplaceable data would dissolve. Loons don't just panic. They sometimes don't return. You can't patch research like that back together. Nora stepped into the kitchen and froze when she saw my face. What happened? I turned the laptop around and watched her expression move from confusion to disbelief to something more dangerous. That's fraud, she said. She can't just claim your land. That map literally points to our dock with parking instructions. I could feel the pressure building behind my ribs. She's telling people where to park on our land, I said, like she owns it, like we don't exist. I called the county office. The clerk was patient and precise. Our septic permit allowed for residential use, maximum 12 guests. Anything larger triggered commercial regulations, and infrastructure we definitely didn't have. You might want to document everything, she said after I explained what was happening. This could escalate. Her tone, the careful kind you use when the ground is starting to shift, told me she knew this wasn't misunderstanding. It was a fuse burning fast. Rebecca Moore, our neighbor to the south, wasn't part of the HOA either. 2 years back, after we all dealt with a minor pollution scare, she bought a drone to monitor water clarity and shoreline health. A quiet hawk with rotors instead of feathers. I walked over to her place, clutching the printed email. Rebecca listened, then blew out a breath that turned into a head shake. She did what? She pulled up the HOA's community board on her tablet. They've been posting for weeks, she said, swiping. Community waterfront celebration. Bring the whole family. I scrolled through thread after thread. Kids asking about swimming zones. Someone requesting handicap parking near the venue. Couples planning to bring kayaks. Every arrow in Pamela's digital and physical campaign pointed to our address. Then came the part one didn't see coming. I checked our security camera footage for the last week. 3 different vehicles had driven down our private road, pulled up to the gate, and gotten out. One person paced along the fence line with a tape measure. Another took photos. A third scribbled notes on a clipboard. They were scouting our property like it was a park shelter they reserved. Like they had permission. Like we didn't live there. In the home office, documents cover the desk. Deed, survey, septic certification, federal research license. Every email captured as a PDF in a folder I named evidence. Nora sat across from me and put both hands flat on the table. We need to stop this before Saturday, she said. I was already typing. But before I went on the offensive, I needed to understand how big this thing had grown. I called the catering company on the invoice. Lakeside Catering. A cheerful voice answered. I introduced myself and said I had never authorized any event. Papers rustled. Silence. Sir, we have a signed contract from the HOA president. She gave your address as the venue and assured us she had all permissions. I asked how much. The number made a room tilt. $1,500 for food service, another $800 for equipment. On my name, without my signature. We were told this was a community event with full property owner cooperation, the caterer said, now sounding more nervous than cheerful. That was a lie, I said. You might want to call your legal department. Evening came down like honey over the lake. Gold and slow, and usually enough to smooth out any rough day. Not this one. I stood on the deck, listening to the water and thinking about Saturday. Nearly 100 people. Music. Boats nosing up to our dock. Small kids with water wings. All of them misled into believing they had a right to be there. The audacity almost impressed me. Almost. A loon called low and stern. Territorial. Protective. I understood it perfectly. This wasn't just about property rights anymore. It was about protecting irreplaceable environmental research, about a small lake house with a big promise hanging on a wall, about saying no when someone decided that yes was easier to fake. I opened a new email. Subject: formal notice of trespass and fraud. I addressed it to Pamela Knox, CC'd the HOA board, and copied the county sheriff. Every line was precise. Every attachment a brick in the wall I was building. Tomorrow, the gate would get a chain. Saturday would not be what nearly 100 people expected. Nora stepped out with 2 glasses of wine, handed me one, and rested her shoulder against mine. You're really doing this? She asked. I looked at the research equipment tucked near the cattails, at the narrow band of sandaloons used to slide out into open water, at the small house we built to be both home and field station. Tonight the gate gets chained, I said. Then we make sure we do it right. We clinked glasses without speaking and drank to determination. Thursday morning, I drove into town first thing for chain and padlocks. Contractors swarmed the hardware store, trading jokes in the aisles. I was weighing locks when I heard Rebecca's voice from the next row. Excuse me, did you say the Hale place? A man answered without hesitation. Yeah, big HOA setup Saturday. Almost 100 guests. Full catering. My grip tightened around the chain. That's private property, Rebecca snapped. The man laughed, but not comfortably. The president showed us the layout. Buffet line near the dock. I didn't move, barely breathed. Rebecca's voice went cold. The owner holds a federal wildlife research permit. There is no event. The rest of their conversation turned to murmurs. but I'd already heard enough. Back home, the phone lit up like a slot machine. A neighbor from 3 houses down called. Excitement bubbling. We're bringing the kayaks for Saturday. I swallowed. No event is happening here. I said carefully, this is private property. Confusion hung in the silence like fog, but the HOA bulletin said that bulletin is false. I said, please don't come. You'd be trespassing. The calls kept coming. Parking questions, bathroom availability, even requests were placed to set up a kid zone. Nora came home from teaching to find the kitchen table covered in notes, names, numbers, who said what. She ran her eyes down the list. This many people can't all be lying. They're not, I said. They're being lied to. That evening, Rebecca called again. You need to see this. Her laptop showed thread after thread on the HOA's message board. Bring dogs? Vegetarian options? When is the swimming area open? All of it aimed at our address. Scroll down, she said. Someone had asked why the property owner wasn't participating in planning. The replies turned my stomach. Comments painted me as antisocial, difficult, eager to avoid confrontation. Typical researcher attitude. One wrote, Pamela had been building a story about me for weeks, and now the story was working. I drove to Jim's bait shop, the unofficial town hall for lake folks. Jim, who usually saved his biggest smile for fishing reports, greeted me with a bright, big day Saturday, huh? I stared at him until the grin faltered. Pamela came by with maps, he said, showed everyone your beach access. So the HOA finally got community use rights. She had what? Formal looking papers, he said, and a good pitch about shared waterfront resources and community benefits. How many people did she show? I asked. Maybe 20, he said. Families, fishing groups. She made it sound signed and sealed. On the bulletin board by the door, a colorful flyer pinned to the middle promised, Waterfront Family Day, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The location line punched me in the ribs. HOA Research Property. Activities listed, cheerful fonts. Even a phone number printed in bold. Not mine. By the time I got home, a catering truck had lumbered down our road and stopped at the lock gate. The driver got out confused, checking paperwork. He needed to take measurements for Saturday's event. I told him there was no event here. His shoulders slumped. We got $1,500 in food ordered. Deposit paid. The HOA present signed 2 weeks ago. When I explained, his expression drained from concern to fury. We turned down 3 jobs for Saturday because of this. This could really hurt us. He leaned against his truck and called his office, voice rising as he explained the situation. When he hung up, he looked exhausted. Can you sign a statement that you never authorized this? He asked. Yes, I said, and I signed. By then, even the sunset felt like a warning. Binoculars glinting from across the lake, silhouettes curious about our layout. Later, I learned those watchers were neighbors who believed they were helping with the event. Pamela's scheme reached so far that even innocent curiosity became evidence. Nora found me on the deck as darkness smoothed out the water. We were supposed to enjoy living here, she said. Quiet research, peaceful evenings, maybe contribute something that matters. I nodded. Tomorrow we put up the chain. Saturday we document everything. Then we make sure this never happens again. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Just intercepted another vendor scouting your road. Portable restroom company. Told them it's private property. They seemed shocked. How many providers did she hire? I typed back. We'll find out at the lock gate, she replied. Drone will be recording. Legal documentation's about to be comprehensive. That night, I drafted certified letters to the HOA board, every vendor I could identify, the county environmental office, dates, timestamps, screenshots, contract claims that didn't exist, maps pointing to my land. It wasn't just about Saturday anymore. It was about creating a trail of truth so braided and strong that even the best spin couldn't unravel it. Friday morning, the week's strangest call came at breakfast. This is Patricia Collins with Lakeshore Liability Protection. I'm calling about the special event policy for tomorrow's gathering at your property. My mug froze halfway to my mouth. What special event? A beat of silence stretched long. Your HOA president applied yesterday, Patricia said cautiously, listing you as property owner and the association as organizer, standard for community events. I walked Patricia through the whole mess while she listened carefully. Without explicit owner consent, she said when we finished, there is no policy. This application will be flagged for deception review. Her tone made it clear. We had crossed into criminal territory. An hour later, a county SUV rolled up the driveway. The environmental health inspector stepped out with a worn notebook and a practiced eye. We've had reports of increased traffic heading this way, he said. Need to verify septic permit status for the weekend. I showed him my residential permit. Maximum 12 guests, he read. His eyebrows climbed. Nearly 100 on a 12-guest system? That's an immediate violation. And this, he tapped one of our laminated warnings about the research zone, falls under federal protection. Interference carries serious penalties. He walked the property line, took pictures, and handed me his card. Call immediately if anyone shows up tomorrow. Enforcement will be standing by. It felt like someone had finally put a firm hand on my shoulder and said, "We've got you." The calls and emails kept coming. An event coordinator offered day of management support. When I explained, her cheerful tone vanished. We're withdrawing immediately. Our insurance won't touch this. A wedding photographer emailed about backup dates because, apparently, Pamela had already pitched Sunday as a follow-up booking. Nora stood in the doorway, taking the table covered in business cards and printouts. How many people has she contacted? I swept a hand over the chaos. Caterers, planners, insurance agents, an entire ecosystem built on someone else's property. By afternoon, the rumor smoke started to sting. Rebecca reported from the grocery store. Pamela's telling people you're charging the HOA for access, said the community voted to pay you, and you're refusing the money. She was painting me as the villain who ruined a good time and held the community hostage for cash. It wasn't just fraud anymore. It was strategy. Then the certified letter landed like a brick. A formal request from the HOA's attorney referencing community easements, shared waterfront rights, and historical use patterns. All of it fantasy. No easements existed. My own attorney called it what it was: conspiracy. Multiple businesses misled. Vendors coordinated. Event insurance attempted under false pretenses. And counsel involved based on lies, he said. Document everything tomorrow. Photos, video, witness statements. When families hit a chain gate, the evidence writes itself. But be ready. People don't take public embarrassment well. Friday evening slid into a calm as sharp as a blade. We set motion sensor cameras at 3 angles. I printed copies of permits for laminated sleeves. Nora organized bottled water and information sheets for confused arrivals. We were going to tell the truth to whoever showed up, whether or not they wanted to hear it. The county inspector called one more time. We flagged your address, he said. Any violation report gets immediate response. Federal protections apply here. We got your back. I stood in the last light and listened to the loon calls draw lines across the water. Tomorrow would answer a bigger question than I expected. Do property rights still mean what we think they do? Or can one person's fantasy of authority excuse them from the law? The chain sat ready in the garage, heavy and cold. Saturday morning, I loaded it into the truck with the padlock gleaming like a promise. Nora brought out coffee and camera equipment. Ready? She asked. I nodded. Rebecca texted. Drone prepped. Recording for my property. Legal documentation starts now. The gate sits about a quarter mile from the house where the trees thin and the lake opens up, even with no trespassing signs already posted. The place had started to feel too porous. I pulled the chain through the gate and fence eyelets link by link. The padlock closed with a final, solid click. I tested it 3 times, the way you do with something that has to hold. Then I mounted the signs that I level: private land, federal study, protected zone, no unauthorized entry, violators subject to federal prosecution. Laminated copies of our deed, septic certification, and research license went up in clear sleeve along the fence, visible, undeniable, not just keep out, But here's why. Neighbors came out with coffee and coats to watch from porches and mailboxes. A handful of folks who had fact-checked into the truth overnight. This morning wasn't a battle. It was a confirmation. We set up 2 folding chairs just off the shoulder, so we could meet people with facts, not anger. At 9:15 a.m., sedan rolled down the road and stopped. A woman rolled down her window, looking embarrassed before I even spoke. "Are we at the right place?" she asked. I handed her an information sheet and pointed to the documents on the fence. "Private property, federally protected research site." I said, "I'm sorry you were misled. There's a public beach 10 minutes that way." She thanked me twice and turned around. A minivan came 20 minutes later. Kids pressed faces to glass, eyes bouncing between us and the lake. The parents read the posted documents, and their faces fell. "We're so sorry," the mother said. The post made it sound so official. I pointed them to the public beach, and they left, disappointed but grateful for clarity. A fisherman stopped, not to argue, but to shake my hand and take pictures for his group's thread. "You did the right thing," he said. "We've known for years your stretch is off limits." By 10:30, the road was quiet. No music floating up the drive. No parade of SUVs. No HOA president swinging a clipboard and a smile. Rebecca landed her drone and scrolled through footage. "Honestly," she said, "it's a bit anticlimactic." I laughed. That's the point. Citizen fact-checking worked. No crowd, no confrontation, no noise bleeding into 8 weeks of recordings. Just before 11, a catering van did finally arrive. Miguel and his crew, contract-bound by a no-cancel clause within 48 hours. He climbed out, hope and anger wrestling on his face, and waved a paper with a signature block that wasn't mine. "We turned down 3 jobs for this," he said. "We're $5,000 in the hole between staff, transport, and food." Ranger Laura pulled up behind him, hat brim low, uniform neat and non-confrontational. She took statements with an even tone. "Property owner never authorized access," she said. "HOA leader appears to have committed fraud. We'll issue an official report." A couple more cars came and went. A mother asked where to park and then saw the word federal and twisted the flyer in her hands. Another family sat in their car while the parents argued quietly. The father wanted to go home. The mother wanted accountability. Eventually, she walked over to me. "My kids practiced swimming all week for this," she said. "Do you understand their disappointment?" "I do," I said. "But you need to direct your frustration to the person who lied. If you had come in, you could have been charged with trespassing under environmental protection laws." She looked at the signs again, then at her kids, and her face changed from anger to stunned relief. "We're leaving," she said. "Thank you for telling us." By noon, the road was empty. We sat in the folding chairs and listened to birds, not cars, water, not voices. Ranger Laura handed me a copy of her official statement before she left. "If you need testimony," she said, "the county stand with you. This kind of deception hits every part of what we do: public safety, environmental protection, basic law." I thanked her and folded the paper into a file I'd started 2 days earlier. Sunday morning brought a different kind of rush. Screenshots, message board threads, vendor posts, apology emails from parents who had almost brought their kids into a mess they didn't create. Rebecca forwarded a link titled HOA Property Fraud Timeline. Someone in the community had compiled the whole story with receipts. Friday's vendor coordination, Saturday's quiet gate, confirmation that Pamela resigned overnight. Lakeside Catering posted an official statement. "We were defrauded by HOA leadership claiming unauthorized venue access. Losses incurred. Legal action pending." The rental company chimed in, emphasizing the need to confirm authorization directly with property owners. Insurance forums circulated warning notes about an attempted coverage application with false ownership claims. The county prosecutor announced a review of the documentation. I didn't need a reporter to tell me what I was reading. It was accountability rising like a slow tide. My inbox filled with interview requests. I declined television spots, but provided a written statement to the local paper. The property owner never authorized any event. The HOA president exceeded her authority. Federal research protections were maintained. That afternoon, a Marine veteran who had shaken my hand at the gate posted his account. 20 years of service spent defending rights like mine, proud to see someone stand their ground without escalation. His credibility helped swing opinion across a few stubborn lines. The fishing group added an ecological context thread about loon conservation and acoustic research. What had started as a property dispute was now a conversation about wildlife protection, research integrity, and how fragile truths can be when people assume authority supersedes law. By Monday, even the HOA board couldn't keep the lid on. Their damage control post claimed they had no idea what the president had been coordinating. The comments were merciless and fair. Why didn't you verify? How did this get so far? Multiple families posted screenshots of old HOA handouts, clearly showing our parcel outside association boundaries. Parents flooded the thread with questions about liability for trespassing on federal research land. Vendors discussed filing and small claims. Sponsorship partners pulled support. And every new post pushed the same message. Trust only goes as far as verification. For all the noise online, our lake was exactly what it should be. The loons called. The wind carried their voices, and the spectrogram on my screen displayed perfect lines of undisturbed sound. The federal agency renewed my permit with unexpected commendation. Exemplary site protection under challenging circumstances. The research paper took shape faster than any draft I'd written. The Journal of Wildlife Conservation accepted with minor revisions, and even asked for an editor's note to highlight the protection of scientific work against administrative interference. Our story became a case study in conservation circles. Researcher defends study site from HOA encroachment. Schools asked Nora if we would talk to students about wildlife protection and the importance of respecting private property and federal law. Bella from the Eco Club at the high school emailed to say they used our story in class for a civics assignment about community accountability. Not the way I want to become a teaching tool, but I'd take it. The HOA itself changed. New bylaws formalized restrictions on presidential authority. Mandatory verification for any event venue. A bright, permanent line drawn where there should have been one all along. Across the region, neighboring associations updated their policies. Event planners circulated cautionary checklists. Insurance underwriters flagged Pamela's name. The ripple widened beyond my address and across the lake into the way people handled each other's rights. Spring returned on a morning, so clear it felt made to be photographed. The loon slid back across the water and settled into the nest, unbothered, undisturbed. A small federal plaque replaced our temporary warning signs. Simple, professional, protected study area. My favorite thing about it was its quiet. The chain in the garage became a symbol, not a tool. Protection through legitimacy instead of locks. Visitors sometimes stopped at the gate to read the plaque. A few asked questions. Some of them had been in my driveway once. Faces pink with embarrassment. Now they wanted to know what we had learned. Nora arranged a community talk at the library. People came and asked smart questions about wildlife, research, and boundaries. The room buzzed with a new kind of energy, engagement instead of entitlement. The data surprised me. The loons' communication patterns were more intricate than we initially thought. 8 weeks of pristine recordings can do what no lab simulation can. We secured a multi-year grant to expand the study. Graduate students came to learn our methodology. Environmental advocates studied our protection plan. We agreed to coordinate with fishing groups on quiet windows near the nest. A scientist friend used our story as an example in a talk titled Property Rights and Conservation, Not Enemies.